Hey guys, it's Kevin here. Um, some of you know me as Big Noob. That is my fighting game handle. I thought I'd give you guys a little bit of a tier list video. It's going to be a little interesting though. I'm not going to be creating like a character tier list or a fighting game tier list. It will involve fighting games. However, what I want to talk about is the fighting games that I have actively played throughout the course of my life. And I want to develop a tier list based on how hard or how easy it was for me to get into these fighting games, to learn how to play them. So, without further ado, let's begin. All right. So, right now we have this tier list maker. Um, yeah, I'm using OBS, and my camera is not good because it's a built-in camera for my laptop. So I'm just doing this as a test run for OBS as well. So yeah, let's give it a shot. So there are a lot of games that are listed here, but I haven't actively played all of them. So I decided to create a section for the games I've actually played actively, and I'm going to grade them based on how easy they were to learn or how hard they were to learn. It's going to start from very easy, then it's going to move to easy, then it will move to somewhat easy, then it will move to average, somewhat hard, hard, and finally very hard. So, first thing is Dragon Ball Fighters. That is the first game that comes up here. Dragon Ball Fighters was actually the first fighting game that I got into on a competitive level. To be honest, um, this was the first game where I wanted to learn how to play a fighting game. You know, what are cancels, what are combos, what are supers, what's a gauge, what is a super gauge, what's a bar, something like that. What's a TOD? Uh, Everything that involved fighting game terminology, fighting game lingo, and the general mechanics of every fighting game started with me playing Dragon Ball Fighters. How hard was it for me to learn Dragon Ball Fighters? Well, considering it was the first fighting game I've ever tried learning on a competitive level, I'd say it was somewhat hard. At, Initially, I would say somewhat hard, but I think I'm gonna put it in average. Obviously, if you have played fighting games before prior to Dragon Ball Fighters, this game should not be hard for you at all. In fact, it should be very easy for you to get into Dragon Ball Fighters because it's a very beginner-friendly game, especially with auto combos, uh, such as light auto combos, the medium auto combos, which immediately can help you cancel into a level 1 super, and even more things that help beginners and newcomers come into the game. But what's really good about this game is that auto combos, despite them being useful, they weren't the strongest thing that you could do in the game. It would have been a problem if Dragon Ball Fighters' auto combos were the most powerful thing that you could do in the game and you just spam the auto combo input. But Dragon Ball Fighters' auto combos were not as strong as actually doing your own combos. So I give Arc System Works a lot of credit for taking that approach. Auto combos to me are not supposed to be uh, your number one solution for everything, um, but they do help you get started with the game, and eventually it helps you uh, want to uh, improve without auto combos and get good without auto combos. Overall, uh, it was the difficulty of me learning was pretty much average because it was my first fighting game ever uh, on a competitive level, and yeah, that's the only reason. I actually have Tekken 7. Now I've had Tekken 7 um, before Dragon Ball Fighters. Let me turn down my mic real quick. There we go. There we go. So I've had Tekken 7 way before Dragon Ball Fighters. I've had this since like 2016 when it was new, and but I was always mashing buttons. I grew up on Tekken 3 and Tekken 4, mind you. So, but regardless, I was still like mashing buttons. But after I learned Dragon Ball Fighters, I revisited Tekken 7, and I decided to actually learn the combos. And they were pretty hard at first. I argue that it was actually a little bit harder than Dragon Ball Fighters, especially when it came to movement. Movement, especially, was pretty hard, especially because there weren't a lot of neutral skipping mechanics, such as, for example, Dragon Ball Fighters has double super dash, which is considered a neutral skipping mechanic. You could do that. Obviously, there's a counter for super dash, but that's an example of a neutral skipping move. Tekken 7, I don't think Tekken 7 really had much of a neutral skipping move besides what's it called? Rage Drive. I think that's what it's called. Rage Drive. Because Rage Drive was basically, you were basically positive if the opponent blocked it. So that's the only neutral skipping move I can think of. Correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm misinterpreting the term neutral skips. But Tekken 7, I argue that Tekken 7 is a little harder for me to get into. It was harder for me to get into. It's basically my personal opinion. But to some others, Tekken 7 is probably one of the easiest games to get into compared to the other Tekken games, because I know Tekken 4 was actually pretty hard. Tekken 5 is actually a lot harder to learn than Tekken 6 and Tekken 7. But considering that I started learning Tekken games with Tekken 7, it was a bit hard. So now we're jumping back and forth in time, because now we're going to go back to Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. So I started Dragon Ball Fighters in 2018, as well as Tekken 7. I started learning more advanced stuff for Tekken 7 2018, 2019, give or take. However, Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter, I've had the game before, but I didn't really get into it until 2020 because I was going on a nostalgic trip, and I wanted to revisit some old fighting games that I've had in the past, and luckily I stumbled upon Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. I've also played Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter on Fightcade. On Fightcade. And I'd say this was pretty hard. I think tag games, like Marvel tag games or crossover tag games, they're pretty hard for me to get into. You had your light punch, medium punch, heavy punch, as well as your light kick, medium kick, heavy kicks. And you could chain them. You could do chain combos, which fundamentally it's a little easier than most games which had link combos rather than chain combos. But still, if you wanted to do a full combo, or a full combo that was up to the standards of competitors, or the competitive aspect of gaming, it was pretty hard to do that. So Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, I'd say it was hard. It was hard for me. I wasn't that good at Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter, but I've played it actively. Like I played it for a long time in 2020, a good while. But it was hard for me to learn. Marvel vs. Capcom. the first Marvel vs. Capcom. I say it's the same level. I put Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter above it because it was the first tag game I revisited. First old tag game I revisited, but it's more or less the same. Obviously, there are different like mechanics and different power-ups you can use, right? And different characters. One thing that really caught my eye was when you chose Ryu, you couldn't. You only played as Ryu. I think only Ryu as one of the Shotos. You couldn't play as Ken or Akuma, but you could have their move set as Ryu. You just had to do a certain motion input, and Ryu would transform into an attire that was similar to the corresponding character. So you would sport like a red gi for Ken and a dark gray gi for Akuma. And it was actually really, really cool to see. Learning this game, however, I would say it was hard because it fundamentally was the same as Marvel Superheroes vs. Street Fighter. I think X-Men vs. Street Fighter, I'm gonna skip over to here, was pretty much the same, so I'm gonna put that here too. So now we move on to Marvel vs. Capcom 2, the sequel to the first one. Now, Marvel vs. Capcom 2 is a hard game to get into. I will say hard, but not harder than. I would argue I didn't find it harder than this because what happened was the button layouts were now more simplified. So you could have light punch and medium punch at the same button, as well as light kick and medium kick as its own button. So you would press the button once and light punch would come out. If you press it twice in succession, it would be light punch, medium punch. And it really simplified how much movement your thumb or your fingers had to do when it came to combos. So I found that to be more relieving. It was something to get used to first because I wasn't used to it. I was used to like all the light, medium, and heavy buttons being spaced out and assigned to their own buttons. But Marvel vs. Capcom 2, it's something that I found pretty new. And revisiting it and learning the combos, it was a little easier than the other crossover games that I've mentioned previously. So now we move on to Dead or Alive 6. I have played Dead or Alive 6 before, and I've played it for a while. It was, I'd say it was easy. It was easy for me to get into. I've played the other Dead or Alive games, and I don't really pay attention to the new things that are added in each Dead or Alive game because I always press the same buttons. I do the same attacks. I like to play as what's his name? He's like a Bruce Lee. He reminds me of Bruce Lee. I forgot his name, but maybe you guys in the comments can tell me what his name was. He had like the Bruce Lee energy, you know. But I found it pretty easy to learn. Now we move on to the King of Fighters 14. This was this is gonna come as a surprise to you guys, but this was the first King of Fighters game I've ever played. No, I've never played King of Fighters 98, not King of Fighters 13, none of the other ones. The first one was 14. My opinion on whether or not the game was good is not really a concern here for this video, but I will say it was average for me to get into. It was pretty average. I'd argue average, but slightly harder than Dragon Ball Fighters. I just wasn't used to
Ugh, actually, it's not. No, hang on a second. It's actually a little harder. Hang on, give me there. It's actually somewhat hard. Uh, Harder than Tekken 7 when I was learning Tekken 7. So yeah, it was something. The motion inputs were weird. Now I'm saying this after I started learning Street Fighter games. Even after learning Street Fighter games, the King of Fighters were pretty hard in terms of motion inputs and execution. Obviously, with newer fighting games, they have a buffer system in play and all that stuff. But, even then, I was kind of struggling. I'm kind of a noob, as it says in my name. So I found it somewhat hard and it slightly more difficult than Tekken 7. Super Smash Brothers Melee. I grew up with Super Smash Brothers Melee, but I didn't start playing it, or I didn't start trying to learn it on a competitive level until like I said 2020. 2020 was the year of the grind for me because of the quarantine. But Super Smash Brothers Melee, where'd you go? Very hard. Very hard. There is no buffer system in that game, guys. No buffer system. Let me tell you right now. And you have to be very precise in the moves that you are doing. And oh my god, you have to keep in mind a lot of things too. When you do like aerial attacks and you're landing on the floor after the aerial attack, you have to L cancel, meaning you have to input a button the moment you hit the floor so that there's no additional end lag when you land after an aerial, which is so like, oh, wow, interesting. But yeah, I found it very hard. I tried playing melee on a competitive level for a while. I tried learning it. I couldn't. Man, it was very hard. I couldn't like stick to it. But I was actively playing it. I was trying my best, but I couldn't. I just couldn't get through with it. Super Smash Brothers 4, or for Wii U. I played the Wii U version. Um, this was before 2018, so before I got Dragon Ball Fighters. But I was playing Super Smash Brothers 4 on a competitive level. Not going to tournaments or anything, obviously, but I actually wanted to learn how to do follow-ups and combos and play the neutral game for a character for each character I played as. So yeah, um, Super Smash Bros. 4 to me, learning how to get somewhat good at the game or be better at the game. It was easy to learn. I say it was easy. Um, Slightly harder than Dead or Alive 6, but easier. It's pretty easy. Now, that doesn't mean I was good at the game, okay? That doesn't mean I was good at the game. But I knew how to do some stuff, right? I knew how to do up air trains, right? As Mario. I knew how to follow up, do a lot of follow ups, and be in advantage states for various characters that were in the game. But yeah, overall, I found it pretty easy. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate. Super Smash Brothers Ultimate is the most balanced Smash Brothers game I've ever played, which rightfully so because it's the most recent one. Now, I'd argue that this game optimized everything out of any other game in the series. They optimized everything. There's a parry system. You could tech a lot of. They optimized teching. The buffer system was decent, but sometimes the buffer system acted way earlier than you expected to be. So I remember like pressing up B or something. I remember inputting a move like almost a whole second uh, earlier than I was supposed to, and the buffer system caught that, and I was just like, "Whoa, that's weird. That wasn't supposed to happen." But okay. Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, in terms of learning the game, was very easy. Improving, however, was very hard. It's very hard improving in Smash Bros. Ultimate. You know, there's a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to being good at Smash Bros. Ultimate. But I'd say that learning the game and how it works, given that I've had previous knowledge of the other games, was somewhat easy. Now we move on to a few other crossover games, starting with what's it called? Uh, Capcom versus SNK One. Capcom versus SNK One. To me, I had, I'd say it was average. Yeah, I'd say it was average. I didn't have an easy time learning how to play the game, but a hard time, definitely not. Um, the tricky part is that I knew more of the Street Fighter characters than the SNK characters, uh, or knew more of the Capcom characters than the SNK characters. And what's weird is that when I chose someone like Ryu or Ken or Chun Li, it was so weird to control them using the controls that you usually see on SNK games. So it'd be like the A B C buttons, right? I think that's what it's called. Or am I wrong? A B C D. That was the notation that SNK used, and those are the controls you have to use, regardless of which character you pick. So it was kind of weird to get used to, which is why I put in average. But I got used to it fairly quickly, and then I started playing more and more and more, and then I got okay with it. Capcom versus SNK 2. Now this one, still average, but easier than the first one because I'm used to Street Fighter notation where it's light, medium, and heavy for both punches and kicks. So light, medium, heavy kick, and then light, medium, heavy punch. So um, this also this also went for what was I gonna say? The SNK characters also were also included in this control scheme. So Terry, for example, Terry Bogard would have a light, medium, and heavy punch rather than a light punch and then a meat and then like a heavy punch, and then you didn't have to like press those two punch buttons together for like the EX or whatever. But I'm probably just rambling on and confusing people. But I liked Capcom versus SNK 2. Learning it was really fun. I'm a Shoto head, so you already know I picked like Ryu, Akuma, Ken, Sakura. You know, it was fun. I had a good time. Learning it was an average experience though, like trying to actually get good at it. Guilty Gear Strive. Guilty Gear Strive. Oh man. Uh so I've never played I hadn't played a Guilty Gear game prior to Strive. So Guilty Gear Strive was my first ever Guilty Gear game that I've played actively. And in terms of learning how the game worked, very easy. It was very easy. Now, this is coming from someone who's never, ever played a Guilty Gear game before. I've had previous experience in fighting games at that time, but never had Guilty Gear experience. And I will say, when someone tells if someone tells you that Guilty Gear Strive is such an easy game to learn, Uh, you should believe them because it's a very easy game to get into. Um, Now improving in the game is different. You know, that's harder. But learning how things work in the game, yeah, it was very easy, very easy. Uh, I mained Soul Bad Guy, and now I play as Sin, who I think is the son of Kai. Am I right? Um, Leave some comment. Oh my god, I need to stop doing that. Sorry, I'm so sorry. I keep forgetting the mic picks that up. Okay. Moving on. Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2. This game was a lot harder for me to learn, actually. Considering going from Strive as your first game to to Xrd Rev 2 as your second Guilty Gear game, it was a big jump in terms of difficulty and learning the game as well. I'd say it was somewhat hard. Harder than Tekken 7 because I knew Tekken 7 already and it wasn't that hard anymore, but still a little easier than the King of Fighters 14. And Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2, I knew how to do stuff based on Guilty Gear Strive, but in terms of extending my combos and what is it, expanding on my neutral game and my game plans when it came to playing a Soul Bad Guy was a little more difficult, especially when it came to playing against people who have played Guilty Gear Xrd Rev 2 for a long time already. So it was very hard to adjust. We move on to some Street Fighter games. Let's start at the beginning right here. Street Fighter 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was very, very easy. Actually, no. Let's not. Let's go in order. In the order of when I played each game. So Street Fighter 5 was actually the first game that I decided to play seriously. The first Street Fighter game that I decided to play seriously. And it was hard. Oh boy, was that game hard for me. Now, this is coming from someone who had not played Street Fighter since Street Fighter 4, and even when I played Street Fighter 4, I was a hardcore casual. I could barely do a DP, okay? This game, Street Fighter 5, essentially taught me the basics of Street Fighter. How to throw a fireball, how to do a DP, how to do a Tatsu, how to cancel, how to chain combos, how to do target combos, how to cancel into a super, how to do EX, how to do wake up DPs, how to tech a throw, how to link combos, how to do link combos. It was insane. All right. That I learned Street Fighter in general through Street Fighter 5. So yeah. Next was Street Fighter 4, Ultra Street Fighter 4. Like I said, I've played Street Fighter 4 already before Street Fighter 5, but I played it seriously. I started playing it seriously after Street Fighter 5. Much harder. Much harder to get into. Much harder to learn. FADC was something that I needed to get used to, and it took me a while to get used to it. Yeah, that's all I have to say. There's not much to say. Ultra Street Fighter 4, Street Fighter 4 in general was a hard game to get into. Holy shit. If you wanted to do some crazy cool flashy stuff, you had to practice a lot and you had to get that muscle memory down. So I'd say it was pretty hard. It was hard for me learning Ryu. Ryu, guys, and I made Sakura in that game, but it was just as hard to main Sakura and learn how to play the game as Sakura.
Moving on, we get to Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo. Very easy. Since I already got the experience of playing Street Fighter 5 and Ultra Street Fighter 4, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo was very easy. The combos basic. They had supers in that game as well, but it wasn't. They're just supers. I don't think you could cancel your normals into supers in that game. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I never canceled my normals into my supers. Next is Street Fighter 3 Third Strike. Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. You know where this thing's going. Very hard. Oh my god, very hard. Actually, no, we'll keep Ultra Street Fighter 4 at hard, but top of the hard tier. Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, wow. I give credit to anyone who plays Street Fighter 3 Third Strike to this day and is very good at the game, because holy cow, man. Parrying pretty hard for me. It's pretty hard for me. I try my best to stick to Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, and in turn it did work out, because I performed really well in other Street Fighter games, because I'm like, oh wow, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike is so hard, so all these other games are kind of easier now. So but yeah, Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, one of the hardest Street Fighter games I've ever got into, aside from Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter Alpha 2. Easy. Not very easy, but easy. I love Street Fighter Alpha 2. It's definitely one of my favorite Street Fighter games ever in the franchise. If you've seen my clips of Street Fighter 6, you may say, are you sure Street Fighter 6 is not your favorite over Street Fighter Alpha 2? I'm sure. Yes, I've played Street Fighter 6 a lot. Right now, I've played Street Fighter 6 a lot more than Street Fighter Alpha 2. But Street Fighter Alpha 2 it's so nice to just revisit that game. And it's like, I get a nostalgic trip even though I haven't played that game as a kid. But I still get nostalgic trips because I have played Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, and the soundtrack is very similar. The soundtrack and the arrangement of the songs is very similar to Street Fighter Alpha 2. And I just love playing that game because it's like playing Puzzle Fighter 2, Super Puzzle Fighter 2 Turbo, except that, they're not chibis or anything like that. They're actual like characters with the similar art style. So it was fun. We'll get to Street Fighter 6 later. That'll be the last one. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom 3. Hard. Not harder than MVC2. No, not harder than MVC2. MVC2 was much harder than that, but it was hard. Very hard. I play as Wesker, Akuma, and Nova. I used to play as Akuma, Ryu, and Deadpool, but I switched the two characters. But yeah, getting into the game it is okay. Learning how the game worked was okay. It was simply learning how to optimize everything, given the fact that I had prior knowledge in the other crossover games. Learning that made the game so much harder than it needed to be.
So that's why I put it um, in the hard category. Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. Persona 4 Arena Ultimax was um, a somewhat easy game to get into. Easier than Smash Brothers Ultimate. Somewhat easy game. I say that because I picked one character and I stuck to that character and didn't try anyone else. Um, so it was very easy for me to learn through that one character how the game worked, and I also learned how other characters worked by playing against them. So it was pretty easy to get into, especially due to the fact that I had already some experience in anime fighting games. So uh, P4AU was not that bad to learn. Soul Calibur 2. All right. I grew up with Soul Calibur 2 on the GameCube version, to be more specific. Um, but I decided to play through Soul Calibur 2 HD for the PlayStation 3 uh, after getting into a lot of fighting games during 2020 and 2021. So I revisited Soul Calibur 2, and it was fun. It was so fun. Uh, Obviously, I will put in very easy because I already knew the game at that point. Same with Soul Calibur 4, knew the game already. Very easy. I don't have the latest Soul Calibur game on here because I didn't play it long enough. So, yeah, I've only played it like 3 times. So, yeah. Mortal Kombat X. Um, hard. Oh, hard, hard, hard. Come on. Thank you. Hard. I am not used to playing Mortal Kombat games, let alone NetherRealm Studio games, or games made by NetherRealm Studios. Um, it was just hard for me. Mortal Kombat X was a very fast-paced game. The combo system was insane. If you knew how to do combos, the combos are flashy, especially if you played as Liu Kang or Sub-Zero, Ermac. Who else? Scorpion. Oh my gosh, Scorpion had some combos, dude. He had some nasty combos. Moving on to Mortal Kombat 11, argue it was actually easier. In fact, it was average. I'm not good at Mortal Kombat games or NetherRealm Studio games, but Mortal Kombat 11 was very easy. Very easy compared to Mortal Kombat X. And finally, if we move on to the final game, which is the game I currently play, Street Fighter 6. Street Fighter 6, in terms of learning the game, was somewhat easy. I say somewhat easy because, one, I had prior experience to the other Street Fighter games. Two, because of that, I just knew all the normals. And so, what that meant was, I'm sorry, two is because of my experience with other fighting games besides Street Fighter. And, yeah. But the reason I didn't put in easy or very easy is because despite that, my combo game was actually very simplistic. I played Street Fighter Alpha 2, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, uh, what's it called? Street Fighter 5. And my combos were very simplistic when it came to Street Fighter 6. So I was not used to using the drive meter at first, as well as the parry system. But as time went on, I caught on really quick. Street Fighter 6 is very accessible. It's a very accessible game, very beginner friendly. I recommend anyone who has never played a fighting game before to try Street Fighter 6. You could start with the modern control scheme, and then as you get better, you could move on to the classic control scheme. And the transition is a little weird at first, but then you start getting used to it. It's such a weird thing. Obviously, I didn't start with modern controls. I've tried it after playing on classic controls, and it's like, okay, it's not that bad. Uh, but yeah, it's very beginner friendly. You could get good pretty quick. It helped me understand fighting games a lot more. I will admit that. Um, After playing Street Fighter 6, I revisited Ultra Street Fighter 4, and I was able to get the FADC mechanic down, like just like that. I caught back onto it, probably because of the way Street Fighter 6's mechanics work. You have to hold down parry and then double tap forward to do a drive rush, or you could press forward and then tap parry plus forward to do the macro drive rush, right? Not a macro drive rush, a shortcut. Not a shortcut. An advanced attack. You could do an alternative button input. Um, and that alone allowed me to pick up FADC on Ultra Street Fighter 4 much more quickly than when I first started Ultra Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter 6 is a really nice game. I think I see myself playing it for a very long time, probably up to the end of its service. But yeah, I'm excited for when I'm excited for wherever this game goes, wherever it takes us. In terms of learning it, I found it somewhat easy. So yeah, this is my tier list for how difficult it was for me to learn each fighting game that I've played actively. Smash Bros. Melee and Third Strike are in very hard. You also have these games that are in hard. Somewhat hard for me to learn these three games. Then we have these three games that, or four, sorry, these four games uh, that were pretty average for me to learn. Then these games I found somewhat easy. These games I found easy to learn. And finally, these games I found very easy to learn. All right. With that being said, that concludes this video, this tier list. So, I want to thank you guys for watching this video. If you like what you saw, be sure to comment, like, and subscribe. Again, I apologize for this camera quality. It's a built-in camera on an old laptop, so it's not gonna look good at all. I know. Maybe I'll get some better gear, and if you like these kinds of videos where I just sit down and do some tier lists based on my own opinion, and based on my own experiences, because I don't think I could provide an objective opinion for fighting games, because there are a lot of people out there who know fighting games a lot better than I do, and I just make a tier list based on my personal experience. So yeah, all right. Like I said, thank you guys so much for watching. This is Kevin signing out. See you guys later.